It's also striking, George, that every defense falls apart almost before the end of a single news cycle. There's a quid pro quo, no quid pro quo. Oh, yes, there is. You know, I know Chris Christie, before this really heated up, before the transcripts started coming out, said, listen, if it's as though he said, I need a favor, then he's in trouble. It's clear that he said, I need a favor, though. I mean, everything that people have said in an effort to defend him has collapsed under the weight of the president's conduct.
What we just heard the president say is delusional, and it's debilitating. It's delusional to say that the call was perfect. It's delusional to say that the whistleblower was wrong in any significant respect. It's delusional to say that the ICIG said anything that was incorrect or acted anything but responsibly. And because it's so delusional, the Republicans can't wage any coherent defense. The only possible defense, and I don't think it's a legal or constitutional defense, it's more of a political defense, the only conceivable coherent defense they could wage is that, yes, he shouldn't have done it, and it's an isolated incident, and there's an election next year. And this was bad, and you know, it's just, maybe we should censure him or something like that. Some kind of like what Democrats did in 1998 and 1999 with Bill Clinton. You accept that he shouldn't have done that. But he won't let them do that. He won't let anybody wage a coherent defense on his behalf. Sometimes when you're defending people, you have to admit there was something not quite right.
Right.
And that preserves some credibility. The Republicans are just shooting away their credibility. They have none now.
You know, and it's unbelievable, Claire, to be at a place where if they don't exhibit any sort of conscience about the conduct, which is not in dispute. Not a single Republican disputed the fact that Donald Trump conditioned military aid on these investigations. They are saying we're fine with President Warren or President Biden conditioning military aid in the future on dirt on anybody. I mean, I thought the lines of questioning about what would be appropriate in terms of prosecuting, and most of these questions went to George Kent. His body of work in foreign policy is around sort of educating and getting into law, the rule of law in these young democracies. It seems like a very, very treacherous precedent to set.
Well, and think about how this precedent could be applied. We might have a president now whose children are engaged in high-level financing of deals around the world, using their connections to the leader of the United States of America. And so are they going to be okay if a Democratic president calls a country and says, hey, we're not going to give you any aid, including crucial security aid, until you complete an investigation over what were the financial ties between the Trump Organization, Don Trump Jr., and what was going on in Turkey or in Saudi Arabia, and all the financing that went on. And, you know, as all the prosecutors know at this table, you follow the money. There's money to follow in the Trump family as it relates to foreign interests during this man's presidency. Now, we know what Lindsey Graham would do if that happened. We know what Jim Jordan would do if that happened.
And what he'd be wearing.
And this is the hypocrisy of all this. They know this is terrible. And on the Inspector General, if the president does this, Chuck Grassley has been a champion for inspectors general and for whistleblowers in the Senate. And he and I work together. Susan Collins has been a champion. If he does this, and what it was stated in the coverage of this is that he wanted loyalty. Well, the sign of an insecure leader is someone who demands loyalty.
Or someone who's in trouble.
Or someone who's in trouble. I think it would really be a huge mistake for him to do this, although I've said that many times before, and he does it.
And here we are. All right,
here we are.
The president also in this news conference underway, responding to the new evidence revealed by Ambassador Taylor. Let's listen.
A lot of time glued to the TV today, but there was one moment where Ambassador Bill Taylor recounted a conversation that an aide of his overheard. It was the day after the phone call with Zelensky on July the 26th, in which the aide says that he overheard you say to Sondland, how are things going with proceeding with the investigations? Sondland repeated back to you, according to this aide, that Ukraine was prepared to do everything that you wanted it to do. Is that correct? And can you fill in some more?
I know nothing about that. First time I've heard it. The one thing I've seen that Sondland said was that he did speak to me for a brief moment, and I said no quid pro quo under any circumstances, and that's true. The other, I'd never heard this. In any event, it's more second-hand information, but I've never heard it.
Do you recall having a conversation with?
I don't recall. No, not at all. Not even a little bit. The only thing, and I guess Sondland had stayed with his testimony, that there was no quid pro quo. Pure and simple. Yes.
So Donald Trump, at whatever age he is, no quid pro quo. There's an 8-year-old on the New York Times podcast this morning saying it's not really a quid pro quo because the Ukrainians didn't get anything. I mean, that seems to be the most ludicrous talking point of all.
Yeah, that's right. And so, I thought it was really interesting that Taylor said that Trump thinks that he was owed something by the Ukrainians. And Taylor was asked, well, what was he owed? And he said, I have no idea. Maybe the Ukrainians should thank us for the military aid that we are giving them, but that's also in our national interest. But we see the president grasping at straws precisely because he does not have a defense. In that earlier tape, he mentioned something about, well, there's another call that I'm going to release the transcript of. So apparently there's one call earlier with Zelensky when the president actually didn't try to shake him down. Well, that's like if you're charged with a bank robbery in March, saying, well, I was in that bank in February and I didn't rob it, so that's not a defense.
It's ridiculous.
And to go back to the point about him still asserting that it's perfect, he actually has convinced himself of that. And it's not only debilitating to his defense, it shows why he needs to be removed. Because he doesn't understand. He can't comprehend why what he did was so wrong. He's incapable of carrying out the duties of his office.
Do you think that anything that happened today changed the sort of sense of what the calculation is, that he's likely to be impeached by the House, but that it's a really steep hill to see him convicted in the Senate?
I don't know that it changed. This day in and of itself has changed anything. It may have moved a little bit. I think we have to see the rest of the testimony. I think as you talked about in the prior hour, it's the bricks, the bricks that all fit together. And I think the public is going to start to see the bricks. And this is the first. This is the foundation.
And unlike his border wall,
right. It's actually being built.
And you can't saw through it.
Exactly. All right. We've been here a long time. Thanks for bearing with us. We're going to sneak in a break. We'll be right back.